is some collateral damage by Metascat. Chapter 2. To Ichigo's complete lack of surprise, there's yet another educational decree. Number 26. All clubs disbanded. Waiting for them on Monday morning. And that is why you don't hold top secret meetings in a shady pub. She knows, says Bota. She can't, insists Ron. Ichigo considers explaining that it would almost be harder for her not to know at this point, but he gets distracted when Ron tries to run up the stairs to the girls' dorms to cry to Granger about it, then immediately slides back down, causing the morning to become hilarious. To Ichigo, at any rate. Everyone else seems to think it's all very grim. Though he'd never say so, Ichigo's downright relieved that Quidditch is cancelled. It makes Potter far less likely to die. If Potter dies, they'll have lost their first stalking goat, which means Urahara would definitely make Ichigo find the next one. Plus, Ichigo would probably feel guilty about it. He is supposed to be the kid's bodyguard. It's ultimately decided that Defense Club is still on, though, decrees notwithstanding. Sure, it has to happen in total secrecy and absolutely not break curfew, but that was true before. Nothing's really changed, but that doesn't stop everyone from freaking out about it all the way to history. And then Potter's owl crashes class, making it the most exciting history class they've ever had. Potter promptly ditches for the greater good, or at least the health of his owl, and Ichigo follows after him like a loyal bodyguard, or possibly an extremely bored student. Benz doesn't argue, obviously. He never dare argue with Ichigo about anything. Why is Ben so afraid of you? Potter demands curtly as they hurry down the corridor. Why is Smith afraid of me? Ichigo counters. That's not the same thing at all, Potter insists, but he manages a strained smile. Kid is seriously worried about his owl, damn. Ghosts aren't afraid of anyone. Well, according to Luna, my face makes children cry. Maybe it has that effect on ghosts too. Potter throws him an exasperated glance, but gets distracted by an argument with gargoyles. This school! And then forgets about Ichigo completely when McGonagall opens the gargoyle door. After some back and forth over whether Potter's turning into an actual juvenile delinquent, McGonagall, or someone, agrees to nurse the owl back to health. She also tries to make Potter understand that sending top-secret messages via defenseless bird is maybe not so top-secret. Ichigo wishes her the best of luck with that one. How do you doctor birds? Anyway, Potter's owl is pretty big, but some of them aren't. And it seems like it'd be a real veterinary challenge to do more good than harm. All those tiny moving parts. Huh. Magic, probably. In any case, because the owl wasn't done causing chaos yet, it turns out to have been carrying a message from the dog guy. It wants to talk with Potter by means of a fireplace. How secure are fireplaces? Ichigo asks the kids after history lets out, incredulous that this sentence is even coming out of his mouth. Well, Granger pauses. It depends on the fireplace. Like phones, then. Amazing! That almost makes sense! So, Smart Money says a fireplace in a student's common room isn't secure at all. I would imagine not. Granger agrees, worried. Great. Ichigo sighs. And do we have a secure way to warn Dog Guy that the fireplace is a no-go? The kids fidget unhappily, so that's no. Ichigo wonders if his bodyguarding mandate extends to the Dog Guy. He hopes not, because first impressions suggest the man's determined to get himself killed, and Ichigo likes to limit the number of losing battles he's fighting at one time. You'd think that'd be enough for one day. Really? The dystopian school rules, the pet maiming, the suicidally reckless family member. But no. Because on the way to potions, they run into the blonde Slytherin boy who's always winding Potter up for kicks. As far as Ichigo's concerned, winding Potter up is a game so easy it's not worth playing. But the Slytherins are the most easily entertaining kids on campus. No joke. This time, though, Blondie manages to wind up the soft-faced boy, Longbottom, instead, by making cracks about mental hospitals like the class act he is. Turns out messing with Longbottom is the more dangerous proposition, too. Sure, Potter rants and raves, but Longbottom goes from 0 to attempted homicide with no stops on the way. Who knew? It takes Potter and Ron and the scary authority of Severus Snape to get him to settle. Ichigo doesn't even want to know what caused that meltdown because he knows what causes him to melt down like that, and yeah. He doesn't need any more trauma from other people to add to his own bank of nightmares. Ron, on the other hand, thinks he wants to know all about it. He's going to regret that if he ever does find out. And naturally, because it's Chaos Day, Umbridge decides that now is the time to audit Snape. Not her best call. Partially thanks to Ichigo, she is seriously losing her cool, which Snape has no respect for. It'll be very fire meets gasoline, Ichigo expects, and he's pleased with himself for his small part in today's tragicomedy. Umbridge starts out with a reluctant compliment, then promptly recommends completely rewriting the syllables. Snape tries to kill her with his eyes. She speculates on why Snape's been consistently judged unworthy to teach defense, which, given that Umbridge is so bad at teaching that Potter's been driven to take over her class, is a 5-star hilarious topic. Then she starts asking if Snape spends much time outside at night. He looks at her like she's losing her mind, which is not impossible, actually, and tells her he rarely leaves his rooms at night. She asks further serious black trending questions in an increasingly frantic, high-pitched voice while Snape studies her like a lab specimen and gives bored monosyllabic answers, and the Slytherins snake at everyone indiscriminately. Unfortunately, Umbridge manages to rein herself in long enough to go interrogate the students. Snape, who was looking pretty bleak during the defense interrogation, tears up a bit in his sour way at the serious black freak out. Then, once Umbridge moves on to hassling students, Snape goes and yells at Potter for a while, which always brightens his life. Former Slytherin, easily entertained. By the time he makes his way to Ichigo, he's as close as he comes to a good move. "You've solved your one problem, I see," he says, staring in mild disgust at the weird sludge Ichigo's cooking up. Whatever it is, it's not a strengthening solution. On the other hand, it hasn't exploded, so... Victory! Snape leans down like he wants a better look and murmurs quietly, "If you drive that woman mad, the ministry will only send another like her. So I'll start over with a new one." Ichigo murmurs back, "I've got time to kill." "You've more patience than I would have expected, Kurosaki," Snape tells him, straightening up, "considering the hash you generally make of your coursework." "That boy can't speak English, Professor," Umbridge carols across the room. "I'm quite surprised to find you don't know such basic facts about your own students." Snape gives Ichigo an incredulous stare. Ichigo widens his eyes, a silent, "Play along, you know you want to." Snape looks beyond exasperated, but says he is capable of following basic instructions. Barely. Ron quickly, guiltily turns a laugh into a cough, and Potter shoots him a betrayed glare. The rest of the Gryffindors stare studiously into their cauldrons, trying not to smile. The Slytherins... Come to think of it, Ichigo's never actually talked to any Slytherins, and he doesn't talk much in class. It's possible that, as far as they know, he can't speak English. Out of the corner of his eye, he can see the blonde boy puffing himself up in glee. He'll be making something of this at the first opportunity. Kid seriously needs a better hobby. Eventually, potions ends, and everyone escapes to lunch. Ichigo cannot believe this day is only half over. He misses home, where admittedly people are forever trying to kill him, but at least they have the decency to just come at him with a weapon. He's so over all of this politicking and plotting and stuff. All he wants is someone he can swing a sword at without feeling bad about it. Is that so much to ask? How? Ron demands, shocked. Appalled, possibly slightly impressed. How did you manage to get Snape to play along? Ichigo shrugs, as if he doesn't see anything extraordinary in it. Hermione supposes he doesn't. He hasn't witnessed years of Snape cutting off his nose to spite his face when it comes to Harry. He hates Umbridge more than he hates me, Ichigo explains. The enemy of my enemy, whatever. The enemy of my enemy? Ron repeats, confused. Honestly, Ronald, Hermione sighs. She should know better by now than to be surprised by this kind of thing, but honestly, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. It's a proverb. Snape's never going to be our friend, Harry insists. He's just a less important enemy. Ichigo gives him a sharp look. He hasn't been carving stuff into your hand, has he? Hermione must admit she is charmed by Ichigo's protectiveness of Harry. Charmed, but also slightly worried. Even for a bodyguard, Ichigo's taking a lot of interest and, well, historically, people taking an interest in Harry hasn't ended well. She's keeping an eye on Ichigo, just in case. No, Harry says hastily, probably picturing what would be unleashed on the school if Ichigo were to destroy Professor Snape's office. He's just a horrible, hateful man. Ichigo shrugs. Yeah, well, some people are like that. Doesn't mean you can't use them. Hermione hates it when Ichigo says things like this because in theory she agrees with him, but something about the way he says it makes it all sound so uncomfortably mercenary. She shakes her head and tunes out the rest of the conversation, turning to her copy of the Daily Prophet. What with the educational decree excitement at breakfast, she hasn't had a chance to read it yet. There's nothing overly sinister today, so that's lucky. Nothing beyond the low-grade petty evil the ministry's taking to projecting constantly, at any rate. In fact, there's only one item of interest, though it is very interesting. She interrupts the ongoing debate about Professor Snape's potential usefulness with, "Someone's robbed Gringotts." "Again?" Ron asks, shocked. "Yes, and they were successful this time." "Gringotts is a bank, right? There was a bank robbery?" Ichigo asks, suddenly tense. It's odd because Ichigo has never shown any interest in the news until now. In fact, Ichigo typically shows very little interest in anything outside of Harry's physical safety, so this is... Well, Hermione doesn't like it. "There was," Hermione confirms slowly. "Something was stolen from the Lestrange vault, apparently." "What was it?" Harry wants to know. Hermione shrugs. "Undisclosed." Ichigo closes his eyes as if he's bracing himself. "Did anything happen to the dragon?" "Dragon?" "The dragon in the bank." "Oh, yes, there is a dragon guarding the bank, isn't there? But how would Ichigo know that? He can't possibly bank at Gringotts since he barely remembered that it was a bank." Hermione blinks and skims through the rest of the article, and there it was. "Well, the good news is the dragon is alive. If that can be said to be good news in view of the fact that it was set loose inside the bank, went on a rampage and destroyed quite a lot of property and a bit of Diagon Alley before it escaped to parts unknown. Doesn't see casualties, but surprisingly no deaths." Ichigo rubs his forehead, looking tired. "Do you know who was responsible?" Hermione asks carefully. "They're not my fault, and they're not my responsibility," Ichigo says firmly. "If you ever meet them, you can't hold them against me." It hadn't escaped Hermione's notice that Ichigo is becoming fast friends with Fred and George. If he regularly spends time with people who set dragons loose inside banks while robbing them, that explains a great deal. Fred and George must seem positively tame by comparison. "I'm more likely to meet them." "I hope not." "What would they take from Gringotts?" Harry asks again eagerly. "Something awful." Ichigo sighs. "They're on our side, though, so that's good." Both that they're on our side and that they stole the thing. I mean, I'm assuming this Lestrange is a bad guy. "A bad husband and wife team," Hermione explains, folding the newspaper. "The wife, Bellatrix, is, Snuffle's cousin. Also Draco Malfoy's aunt." Ichigo appears not to recognize the names of any of these people, which is frustrating, because within the past few hours, he's actually encountered Malfoy and participated in a whole conversation about Sirius. Honestly, Hermione doesn't think he even tries. "Okay," he says blankly, "so it's a good thing when people steal from them, so there you go." This is not sufficient explanation, no matter what Ichigo seems to think. "Really, though," Hermione says, "who robbed the bank? And how do you know them?" "Really, though," Ichigo drawls, looking annoyed. "You need to let this go." One day she's going to hit Ichigo over the head with a plate. She's going to be forced into it, so she won't feel sorry at all. She is, in fact, ready to threaten him with that plate right now. But she gets distracted by Harry and Ron blathering about divination, and then the bell rings and the moment is lost. If she didn't know better, she would think Ichigo had organized that distraction deliberately. After lunch, the day's blessedly calm. Ichigo figures it owes him that, given the way it started. Sure, he spends the evening trying not to watch Fred and George projectile vomit in the common room, but by the standards of Hogwarts, it's calm. Or at least it is up until late evening, at which point Sirius Black's disembodied head shows up at the fireplace. Ichigo knew it was coming, and he's still not okay with it. He's so done with the Wizarding World. Black chats with Potter and Granger and Ron for a while, like it's no big deal that a wanted fugitive, and this fugitive in particular, the one the Ministry mole is gunning for special, is hanging out in an unsecured fireplace. Eventually, after some babbling about Quidditch and defense and who even knows, Ichigo has to cut in and try to impose some logic. Ichigo is trying to impose logic? It's just wrong on so many levels. You do know Umbridge has it in for you, right? He asks Black. Yeah, kid, I'll know. Black grins like he doesn't have a care in the world. You must be Ichigo. I've heard a lot about you. Here, I owe you one for poking this Umbridge toad in the eye for me. Ichigo scowls at him. Yeah, I'm Ichigo Kurosaki. Hi, you invited me for Christmas. We could talk then. For now, get the heck out of the fireplace before the Ministry creeps find you, okay? Black turns to Harry and gives him a knowing, tolerant smirk. Security people. He says, they're all like this. Harry chews his lower lip in worry but says nothing. In a minute, Ichigo's gonna start killing people himself, thereby eliminating the aggravation of trying to keep them safe. How's that for a security stereotype? Humor me? Listen, Ichigo, you need to lighten up, Black tells him. I've never been... He twists around, abruptly swears, and vanishes. And then Umbridge's hand comes groping into the fireplace and everybody bolts for their dorms. Ichigo hates being the voice of reason. It's thankless. Nobody ever listens to the voice of reason, even or maybe especially when it's correct. It's so much more rewarding to be the voice of reckless aggression. The kids decide to discuss the whole series Black problem the next day in Charms, having clearly learned nothing from the Hog's Head debacle. Or the fireplace debacle. It's like they think they're walking around in soundproof bubbles, and it kills Ichigo. Really, it does. To give them what little credit they're due, though, the classroom is pretty deafening. Ironic, since they're practicing silencing charms. But everybody sucks at them, and the place is packed full of ravens and bullfrogs, all with loud opinions about the lesson. Ichigo's using his completely unmagical stick instead of Zangetsu because he doesn't feel like messily killing a raven today. Not that the raven's grateful or anything, it keeps trying to pull out his hair and steal his shirt buttons. Halfway through the lesson, he starts calling it Grimjow. It's pouring rain outside, so after class, most everybody heads to a first-floor classroom to hide from the weather. The poltergeist's in there too, but he takes one look at Ichigo, screams in terror, and dives into the ceiling. Ichigo's a little insulted. If he wanted that poltergeist dead, no amount of hiding in the architecture would save his butt. Now that is just bloody weird, Ron says, staring after the poltergeist. Not the first time it's happened either, Potter informs him, between peeves and bins. Really, Ichigo? Are all ghosts terrified of you? Granger demands, baffled. Ichigo shrugs, but he's spared answering because the Quidditch team captain bounds over to tell them Quidditch is back on. Her timing's so good, Ichigo's almost willing to forgive the content of her message. Quidditch. The captain's also in the defense group, so seeing her reminds Granger of that whole thing, and everyone completely forgets about Ichigo. He's always appreciated their short attention spans. Granger's apparently having a crisis of faith about their defense club plan, though mainly because the dog guy thought it was a good plan. And yeah, Ichigo gets where she's coming from. After all, the dog guy also thought unsecured fireplace conversations were a good idea, and look where that almost got them. But this kind of tactical math is way too complicated for Potter and Ron. Ron likes to make a plan and stick to it, while Potter lives in a strange reality where people are trustworthy in direct proportion to how much they like him. Ergo, the dog guy who loves him must always be right, and Granger is threatening his entire worldview by questioning that. Plus, the boys are both stuck on the fact that the defense club was Granger's idea in the first place. They can't handle her changing her mind. It confuses them, and when they're confused, they have a tendency to shout. Also whine. Ichigo finds himself missing the distraction the Grimjow Raven provided. And then it gets worse, because it starts involving him. Ichigo, do you think we should go through with a defense against the Dark Arts group? Hermione abruptly asks. Ichigo has no idea why she thinks he should have a say in this. I can't run your cost-benefit analysis for you because I don't know enough. I mean, on the one hand, all training is good training. On the other hand, eventually you'll probably get caught and maybe expelled. Then again, getting expelled with training under your belts is better than getting killed at school because you don't have any. So I don't know. You figure the odds. Granger bites her lip and looks really uncertain. It makes Ichigo uncomfortable when confident people look uncertain, like he's failed them somehow. The bell takes this moment to ring, which is a relief. Hang on, Ichigo says, because he thought he'd gotten used to the school, but he was wrong. You're saying this room could turn into anything you want? Potter nods, like it's interesting, but not incredible. That's what Dobby made it sound like. I guess we'll see. Dobby the elf. The elf who told Potter about a room that can be anything, which Potter's only excited about because it means they have a place to practice defense. Ichigo never would have accused Potter of lack of imagination before, but now he's starting to wonder. He can't decide if he should tell Urahara about this room at the first opportunity, or if he should carefully never, ever tell Urahara about this room. Phil's just on the second floor, Potter says, studying his freaky magical map that shows where everyone is at all times, because why not? And Mrs. Norris is on the fourth. On Umbridge? Hermione asks, fretting. In the staff room, Potter tells her. Okay, let's go. Potter leads them to a completely blank stretch of wall opposite a tapestry of a guy teaching trolls to dance, apparently. Ichigo briefly wonders if trolls are actually a thing, then remembers that one tried to kill Potter his first year, because that's Ichigo's test for whether or not a thing exists, whether or not it's tried to kill Potter. Sometimes their lives really are upsettingly similar. Anyway, Potter tells them to think about studying defense, then makes them all walk up and down along the wall 3 times. And suddenly there's a door in the wall. It's a comfort to Ichigo that even the blasé magic kids are weirded out by that. The room itself is full of books and cushions and gadgets Ichigo can't identify, but it also has a corner that looks like it could have come right out of Urahara's shop. It's got Bokken and throwing knives and fighting staffs and... Are those shuriken? They're shuriken. Ichigo can't even pretend those aren't his fault because they're completely his fault. Apparently his subconscious thinks it's hilarious. Actually, yeah, Shiro's laughing his butt off. His subconscious definitely thinks it's hilarious. Granger beelines to the books, and Ron beelines to the shuriken, and manages to injure himself with them in short order. Potter just stares around in shock until the rest of the kids start wondering, and Ichigo heads over to the Urahara corner to take the shuriken away from Ron and to prevent any other enterprising students from getting their hands on the knives. Plus, it's a good vantage point to watch the room from. The kids vote on a name for their group and do a bunch of other blah blah blah, but eventually they get down to business. Ichigo's amazed to find that Potter's not a half-bad teacher. He knows his stuff. He's patient when he needs to be, stern when he needs to be, scary when he needs to be. Ichigo's impressed. Sure, it's all how not to die 101, but that's better than the nothing these kids came in with. At some point, though, Ichigo's gonna have to prove to them that they rely too much on magic. Magic's great and all, but you've got to have more than one party trick. Seems to Ichigo that getting a wand away from these kids wouldn't be too hard. In fact, Potter apparently survived against the soul-splitting guy in June by taking his wand away, and he's allegedly the baddest badass of the wizarding world. And even he's a one-trick pony. Easy advantage, then, having one more trick. Curfew's at 10, so the kids practice until 9, and then Potter lets everyone out a few at a time, eyes on his magic map. Ichigo's starting to have a faint, feeble hope that maybe they won't get busted for doing this. Weirder things have happened. He and Potter are both still alive, for one thing. Right, Granger says after everyone's gone, but the 4 of them. Just quickly, before we're out of time, I'd like to see what Ichigo can do. He's only been watching so far, and no offense, Ichigo, but you don't seem particularly good at magic, and you're meant to be protecting Ari. I'd feel better if I knew you could honestly do it. Ouch, says Ichigo, but the truth is he's been waiting for someone to bring this up. All they've ever seen him do is accidentally blow stuff up. It'd be weird if they weren't concerned. You did manage to get into Umbridge's office and destroy it, Granger allows, but that only means you have a lot of raw power. We don't know how well you can use it. You are meant to be my bodyguard. Potter agrees apologetically. No, you're right. It's a good idea to check. Ichigo grabs a fighting staff from the Urahara corner. It's too dangerous to use Zangetsu, obviously, but Potter's got a magic stick, so Ichigo should at least get a regular stick. That seems fair. Staff in hand, he walks over to Potter and braces himself for whatever weird magical thing is about to come his way. He can't explain that normally he wouldn't be stuck inside his body for this kind of thing, but whatever. He's pretty sure he can handle their magic even inside his body. He'd better be able to handle it, or he'll lose all of Potter's trust completely, and right now. And that'll make his job a lot harder. Potter says something magical, and a red light comes at Ichigo. He ducks it, then waits for the next strike. Nothing happens. He stares at Potter in suspicion, looking for the trick. But Potter's just standing there, shocked. What, he didn't think Ichigo could dodge the first strike? Ichigo's offended by that, so he does what he does best. He attacks! He runs at Potter, not at superhuman speeds, that seems like cheating, but pretty fast all the same, and swings his staff at Potter's head just to see what he'll do. Protego! Potter shouts, waving his wand, jumping back, and Ichigo slams into a shimmering shield like one of Inoue's. So that's what Protego means. Potter only keeps the shield up for a second, though, before dropping it and firing another red light Ichigo's way. This time, he does it without saying anything. Ichigo ducks the light, but barely. Potter got him off balance, throwing up that shield and then dropping it so quickly. Not bad. Ichigo straightens up and sprints along the edge of the room to the left, looking for something to throw, and there's a small round stone sitting there waiting for him. Ichigo loves this room. He snaps up the stone while Potter keeps up continuous fire, but he keeps missing. A moving target's hard to hit, and it seems like Potter doesn't get enough practice at it. Something to work on. That said, Ichigo's starting to see how Potter survived this long. He's got that light in his eyes, the look of somebody who loves the fight. He might claim to hate violence, but Ichigo bets what he really hates are the results when it goes wrong. The fighting itself, Potter can tell himself whatever he wants, but he obviously lives for it. That said, he's used to an entirely different kind of fight than the one Ichigo's giving him. He expects someone to stand in place and send spells at him, the fault of all those one-trick ponies he's been up against. Ishida had a similar problem back in the old days before he started sparring against his slightly evil father and a half-dozen Shinigami on the regular. Low-level hollows don't exactly have complex battle strategies. Potter doesn't know what to do against an opponent aiming to take him down physically instead of magically. He's fast, but even without Flash Step, Ichigo's faster. He's more practiced and in better shape. It's like all wizards everywhere learned Kido and just stop there! Bad plan, particularly since they need wands to use their Kido. You should never be dependent on something that can be taken from you. Ichigo chucks his rock at Potter. Potter tosses up a shield and stops firing spells until he realizes Ichigo faked him out with a rock. Then he drops the shield and starts firing spells. Again, interesting. So either wizards can't fire spells through a shield, or Potter hasn't worked out how yet. Either way, Ichigo figures it's time to test just how strong that shield is. They only have so long before curfew, after all. He runs at the nearest wall, jumps up and hits it with both feet to change direction, then charges at Potter as fast as he can without cheating. Potter didn't see that coming and almost doesn't manage to cast a shield in time, but he makes it barely. Ichigo's guessing Potter's shield is a lot like Inoue's early days pre-war shields, which is to say he's guessing it doesn't extend all the way around Potter in a bubble. Running with that guess, Ichigo slams his staff into the shield and runs to Potter's right, dragging the staff along the shield and drawing up sparks. Potter can't drop the shield with Ichigo right there, but he also can't fire through it, so basically he just has to stand there like an asshole and watch, which is making him seriously angry. Kid's got all the right instincts, at least. Turns out the shield ends just behind Potter's shoulder. The staff slides off the edge and falls towards Potter, and Ichigo follows the momentum on it, slamming into Potter's wand arm with all his weight before the kid has a chance to cast. Potter drops the wand with an angry, pained yelp. Once he's disarmed, it's pretty easy to knock him down and sit on him, knees pinning his arms. Just to be safe, Ichigo goes the extra mile and shoves the staff under Potter's chin to hold his head in place. Of course, he could have gone even faster and pinned the kid face down, but this is a way to test whether it'll occur to Potter to try to kick him off. It doesn't. Another thing to work on. Bloody hell! Ron says loudly. Harry, are you alright? Granger asks, frantic. How did you... You didn't use any magic at all, Potter gasps, looking shell-shocked. Well, no. Ichigo says, backing off and standing up, leaning on the staff. He thinks about what happens when he tries to use even completely benign magic and shudders. I didn't want to kill you. That would defeat the whole purpose of my being here. He holds out a hand and pulls Potter to his feet. Everyone's staring at him speechless. So they actually believed Potter had been assigned a worthless bodyguard. That says a lot about their faith in the people who are meant to be protecting them. You should be teaching defense, Potter says indignantly, rubbing at the arm Ichigo slammed into. Yeah, that'll bruise. I'm a lousy teacher, Ichigo tells him, which is probably true. Plus, I use a completely different kind of magic from you. Why do you think I'm so terrible at yours? I've never done any of this stuff before. To teach you the way I was taught, we'd have to start from scratch, and we don't have that kind of time. Besides, most of what he knows, they couldn't learn, being human and all. You should teach a hand-to-hand combat section in any case. Granger puts in, looking a scary combination of disapproving and calculating. Harry can teach defensive spells, and you can teach physical defense. If you think that's a good idea. Ichigo thinks it's a terrible idea himself, though it would probably be the bodyguardly thing to do. But you all tend to be pretty out of shape, so I can only teach you so much. For anything else, you'll need to be stronger and faster and have better endurance. That you have to do on your own time. I can't do it for you. How did you learn to fight like that? Ron wants to know. Or he thinks he wants to know. He always thinks he wants to know, says Ron. Well, I joined the dojo when I was little. Plus, my dad's attacked me as a wake-up call every single morning since I was, 10. He attacks me every time I come home, too, and sometimes at random just because. It built up good reflexes. Then there were some older kids in the neighborhood who didn't like my hair color, and they'd beat the crap out of me after school if I didn't fight them off. And a bunch of other stuff happened. I don't know. It was basically learn or die. Now they're all staring at him in horror. Even Potter, which is ridiculous. Potter's life is much worse than Ichigo's. Why would your father attack you? Granger demands, scandalized. Why does the crazy old guy do anything? Ichigo shrugs. I think he was trying to raise me tough, but it's hard to tell what he's thinking, or even if he is. Is he a boxer for a living or something? Potter asks. He's a doctor. They all go silent and try to process that. Ichigo wishes them the best of luck. Do you hate him? Potter asks, quiet and worried. From what Ichigo remembers of Urahara's report, Potter's home life blows too, because the universe felt that being orphaned as a baby by a murder wizard with a grudge wasn't bad enough. No, Ichigo tells him, as comforting as he can manage. He tried his best to raise us. It's just that his best is lousy. Silly guy loves us, though. Potter looks relieved, and maybe a little jealous. And if you're jealous of someone for having goat face as a father, Ichigo figures you are coming from a very low place indeed. Defense Club keeps up, and the kids actually start getting borderline dangerous, so that's rewarding. The Ravenclaws, as a whole, have a weird natural aptitude for hand-to-hand, which Ichigo doesn't get, but it's awesome. If someone could talk Luna into putting on some muscle, she could even give Soy Fan a workout. Well, in 20 or 30 years anyway. The Hufflepuffs, meanwhile, are pathologically incapable of quitting. Seriously, Hufflepuffs never give up. It's annoying because Ichigo doesn't want to beat them unconscious, but he's also about done with their surprise attacks after he thinks they're down. And then there are the Gryffindors and their creative ways of taking out their rage issues on everything and everyone around them. It's a lot more fun than Ichigo expected. The only thing he's sad about is the lack of Slytherins. He thinks Slytherins would be hilariously passive-aggressive and might actually try to poison everyone in the room, and that would be awesome. Not to mention good practice. But when he mentions it to Potter, Potter looks at him like he just spat on the dinner table. Oh well. Meanwhile, Quidditch gets into full swing, and it's a maddening combination of boring and terrifying. It really is the stupidest way Potter could find to die on Ichigo's watch, and Ichigo wishes he would stop trying. Still, Granger's reassured him over and over that Potter doesn't need a bodyguard during every single practice, and Ichigo chooses to take her word on that. Mostly because he could really use the free time. First and most importantly, he decides to check if the room of requirements will actually give him anything he requires, or if it's limited to what the castle has available. Probably option 2, but it seems worth testing, so he waits until the rain-free Wednesday evening when people are likely to be outside and gives it a try. He paces back and forth in front of the wall and really requires a piece of the soul splitter's soul. Then he opens the door to find a small, mostly empty room with a pretty little antique crown sitting right in the middle of it. Ichigo walks in and shuts the door behind him because there's something very wrong with the pretty little crown, and he doesn't want anyone else near it. Its spiritual pressure is a dirty, dark green, just like the thread in Potter's spirit ribbon. Plus, it feels nasty in general. Ichigo tells Zangetsu to turn back into a sword, and they hack the crown into pieces. When it starts bleeding and screaming in a horrible voice of nightmares, Ichigo figures he made the right call. Since that was a success, he goes back out the door and tries again, but no dice. The room presents him with a few other things, though, like it's sorry it can't help. A locket with nothing weird about it, a cup with nothing weird about it, a ring with nothing weird about it. Nice that it's making an effort, anyway. After the third time, Ichigo gives up, but he pats the door in gratitude when he closes it. He thinks this room is his favorite magical thing so far. He takes the broken crown and heads to Dumbledore's office. It's true that he was planning to avoid the guy, but this seems like something he should know about, if only so he doesn't waste time looking for it himself.
Mr. Kurosaki,
Dumbledore says, surprised.
how can I help you this evening?
Found a piece of the soul splitter guy's soul, Ichigo explains, tossing the broken crown onto Dumbledore's desk. Killed it. Figured you'd want to know. It takes Dumbledore a second to even start to respond to that. Ichigo's pleased. He bets it's not every day somebody stuns Dumbledore silent.
That is Ravenclaw's diadem. It is, or was, said to grant wisdom to the wearer.
Dumbledore explains carefully.
Created by Rowena Ravenclaw, the wisest of the founders of the school.
Oh. At some point, Ichigo needs to learn to ask questions before he starts breaking stuff. What's he supposed to say now? Sorry I smashed your priceless magical heirloom. Seems inadequate.
I didn't know. It had to be done.
Dumbledore reassures him.
Once an object is turned into a Horcrux, a container for a soul fragment, there's no way to recover it. Or in any case, no way that I'm aware of.
Well, that's relief. Okay, good.
Mr. Kurosaki, where on earth did you find this?
In the castle, there's this room. The room of requirement, Potter calls it. It gives you anything you want. Or anything the castle can drag up for you anyway. I asked it for a soul piece, and it gave me one. Then I asked for more, but it must not have had any, because it tried to give me some random stuff instead.
Such as?
Dumbledore asks, fascinated. A ring, a cup, a locket. After that I gave up. Dumbledore blinks rapidly.
My dear boy, we're almost certain that one of the remaining Horcruxes is a ring. It's possible.
You mean the room was giving me hints? It's official. Ichigo loves that room. He feels like he should give it candy or something, but that wouldn't do it any good. What the room's like? Being dusted, maybe? Ichigo can do that. That's awesome. Did you already tell Urahara-san and Yoichi-san about the ring? Dumbledore gets a worryingly glazed look.
I did.
He says, sounding not all there. Ichigo doesn't even want to know. Yeah, okay. Moving swiftly along. Do you know which locket and cup it meant? Dumbledore's eyes clear abruptly.
I believe I may. Voldemort wouldn't settle for just any container for fragments of his soul. He'd want something special. The diadem was an important artifact connected to Ravenclaw, which means the cup is likely the one famously enchanted by Helga Hufflepuff, and the locket a well-known possession of Salazar Slytherin.
And they're... where exactly?
I have no idea,
Dumbledore says brightly.
But at least we now have a place to begin.
Ichigo knows that Urahara and Yoichi already destroyed whatever was in the bank. But Dumbledore knows that too, right? Sure, they probably told him. And even if they didn't, Ichigo doesn't like the effect their names have on the guy, so he's just letting it go and hoping for the best. Cool. I'll head over to the room again tonight and ask it to show me all the soul pieces at once. I'll let you know.
Thank you,
Dumbledore says earnestly.
But why tonight, if I may ask? Why not now?
Ichigo shrugs.
Quidditch practice is over in a minute. Potter will think I don't love him if he doesn't see me hovering around doing my bodyguard thing. Would he?
Dumbledore smiles in that creepy, fake, benevolent, Eisenish way.
But he doesn't know you're his bodyguard.
It does, actually, because I told him. Ichigo explains. I didn't tell him why, though. Not that it's hard to guess.
Why would you tell him anything at all?
Dumbledore asks.
He and his friends have been known to evade any sort of watch put on them the moment they know about it. For his own sake, it would be better for him not to know.
This is an obnoxiously Gucci attitude, and Ichigo's annoyed by it. I told him because he and his friends crept up behind me in their cape that makes them invisible while I was giving a report. I had to tell them something. Dumbledore seems shocked.
You noticed them? The invisibility cloak is said to hide the user from death itself.
Well, it doesn't work, Ichigo informs him, obviously, since that's not how death works. Death is an abstract concept. You can't hide from an abstract concept. Apparently, you can't even hide from Shinigami. Where'd that stupid story come from?
It's an old legend. The invisibility cloak was allegedly a gift from death to a young wizard.
Huh. Well, Ichigo's heard of Shinigami doing weirder things. Heck, Ichigo's seen Shinigami do weirder things. And maybe the cloak is some proto-version of Urahara's spiritual pressure masking cloaks. If it is, though, it doesn't work. I guess it's possible. But actually, it sounds like a Shinigami messing with the living. Or worse, a Shinigami experimenting on the living. Either the Shinigami lied about what the cloak did, or the kinks weren't worked out yet. Doesn't really matter now, does it? Ichigo is unsure why Dumbledore looks like all his dreams have just been smashed into confetti right in front of him, but that is definitely how he looks. Anyway, Ichigo mutters uncomfortably. I'll come back tonight, update you on the thing with the soul pieces. Sound good? Dumbledore tries to shake off whatever it was that made him look like his life was over. It works about as well as you'd expect.
Of course, my boy.
He says absently, of course. Ichigo leaves, thanking any available god, and also Kyoraku, that at least Dumbledore isn't his problem. Bottom line, Ichigo informs Dumbledore that evening after dinner and a visit to Ichigo's favorite room in the world. There's the crown, a cup, a ring, a locket, a book, a snake, and a kid. The snake and the kid were little stuffed animals, but I'm assuming the room means an actual snake and an actual kid. So it seems like you were right about Potter having a soul piece stuck to him. Personally, Ichigo thought it was nice of the room to refrain from dragging Potter himself up there, since he's pretty sure it could have, if it had wanted to. It's just that awesome.
The crown has been destroyed,
Dumbledore said thoughtfully.
and if the room showed you a book, it must have been Tom Riddle's diary, which Mr. Potter destroyed during his second year.
Tom Riddle?
It was Voldemort's birth name.
Wow. You mean this guy is named Tom, and you're actually allowing him his delusions of grandeur by calling him that weird, unpronounceable name he came up with while high on evil? What is wrong with you? I'm calling him Tom.
As you wish, Mr. Kurosaki.
Dumbledore says, looking pleased. Guy is seriously weird. Meanwhile, my teachers, they destroyed the one that was hidden in the bank. And you know about the ring. Hey, we're making progress. I'm still not killing Potter, though, so we need some way around that.
I truly fear there is no way around it, Mr. Kurosaki.
Dumbledore looks very sad about it all. Because he's given up. He's a quitter. Ichigo calls it lazy.
You see, there was a prophecy concerning Mr. Potter and Mr. Riddle.
Prophecy? Ichigo wrinkles his nose disapprovingly. Yeah, I don't do prophecies. Dumbledore stares.
You don't do prophecies.
He repeats blankly. Prophecies are a cop-out. Ichigo explains.
There are true prophecies, Mr. Kurosaki.
Dumbledore insists, now looking like he's not sure they're even having the same conversation. Okay, fine, but aren't they mostly self-fulfilling? Plus, you know how sometimes if you really, really believe something's true, you can make it true? It's not quite willing it into existence, but it's close. The power of positive thinking, right?
I'm familiar with the concept.
Well, sometimes if you refuse to believe in something hard enough, you can make it go away. Ichigo learned that from Karin. He also learned that it only works about one time in 50, but hey, that's better than nothing.
This is what you plan to do with the prophecy.
What prophecy? Ichigo counters blandly. Dumbledore sighs like he's got a headache coming on. Ichigo's noticed he has this effect on lots of people. Good talk, Ichigo declares, standing. I'll let you know if we kill any more soul pieces. You let us know if you kill any more, and I'll see you around.
Have a good evening, Mr. Kurosaki.
Dumbledore answers, his hands lifting slightly, then dropping again like he wanted to rub at his temples, but stopped himself. So he tries to lie, even with his body language. Just like Urahara, swear to God. Only, no, Urahara's worse. Urahara's got centuries of experience in being a pain in the butt, whereas this guy's barely cracked his second century. Perspective. Ichigo escapes Dumbledore's office, and immediately the ghost of a beautiful long-haired woman swoops up next to him and starts trailing him to the common room. It's like the good old days in Karakura, but not like Hogwarts ghosts at all. Hogwarts ghosts generally flee from Ichigo. They don't come and hang out. Can I help you? He asks the ghost politely. He's curious about this weird behavior shift. You destroyed my mother's diadem, she says. So this is Ravenclaw's kid, huh? Ichigo can't tell whether she's mad about him destroying the crown or not. He guesses it depends on how she felt about her mom. I had to, he explains, figuring that's safe either way. There was an evil soul fragment in it. Yes, I know. She is looking fierce. I heard it cry out as you destroyed it. I didn't realize. He manipulated me into telling him how to find the diadem, you see. And then he defiled it with dark magic. He deceived me. Kill him for me. Wow. Yeah, the plan is to get rid of him since he's basically dead already. But I'm not doing it for you. No offense, but I don't even know you. I understand. She allows, reining it in a little. We are nothing to one another, after all. Still, I appreciate what you've done. If you have need of assistance in your quest, feel free to call on the Grey Lady. And then she floats off to do whatever it is pissed off ghosts do when they're trapped in a castle with eternity to burn. Ichigo shakes his head and keeps walking. Dead people and their issues. Ichigo considers telling Potter about destroying the latest soul piece, but ultimately he decides he'd rather tell Potter once all the soul pieces have been destroyed, especially the one inside Potter. No sense getting into the whole thing before then and upsetting the kid for no reason, or worse, inspiring him to run off and try to find the soul pieces himself. End results. The kids don't know anything Tom-related is going on, so they're all about Quidditch all the time. It's a trial, particularly since they've gotten to the competition part of the season, and enthusiasm for the sport has hit a fever pitch. They play Slytherin first, and the Slytherins come up with a song to make Ron lose it because they are the most bored people on campus. This is yet another reason to bring Slytherins into the DA. Ichigo could easily keep them too exhausted to come up with mean little songs. Objectively, the song is stupid, but Ron thinks it's traumatizing. Point to Slytherin for knowing the target. Gryffindor still wins, despite Slytherin's best mocking efforts, so that's good. Although, as far as Ichigo's concerned, the highlight of the whole experience is Luna's lion hat, i.e. the most embarrassing accessory Ichigo has ever seen in his life. And the low point is when a Slytherin goon hits one of the possibly sentient balls at Potter's back like a coward, thereby demonstrating the very reason Ichigo wishes Potter would stop playing this demented sport. The goon doesn't know it yet, but his ass will be in the hospital wing before the day is out. Unfortunately for him, Ichigo's got nothing better to do with his afternoon. Like a fool, Ichigo assumes the worst is over after that and heads back to the common room with Granger. It's not until much later that he finds out Potter and the Weasley twins attacked some Slytherin players and got themselves a Quidditch ban for life. Or at least until Ichigo manages to drive Umbridge into howling insanity and an early retirement. Everyone's very, very traumatized. Ichigo tries to feel their pain, but it's hard, and it would be hard even if he didn't hate Quidditch with a passion. Like, no one's dead, no one's been cut off from their magic, they haven't even been separated from their loved ones. He feels strongly that they need to get a grip. After watching about an hour of moping, he figures he should bail before he says something awful, so he hunts down the Slytherin sneak attacker and picks a fight. Once the kid's sufficiently bruised and bloody and sorry about his choices, Ichigo dumps him in the hospital wing and heads back to Gryffindor, where he leaves his body on his bed before going to the roof to call Inoue. He feels Inoue needs both a detailed description of Luna's awful lionette and also the knowledge that the soul splitter guy is named Tom. As expected, she's delighted to hear about both of these things. That in particular. She proposes, in fact, to make herself a lion hat or maybe a kangaroo hat. Possibly a kappa hat. Then she wants to know if kappas are real. They are, though astonishingly, one has never tried to kill Potter, as far as Ichigo knows. The chat with Inoue puts Ichigo in a good mood, as Inoue generally does. The good mood lasts all of 10 minutes, up to the moment he gets back to the room and finds his body gone. It is never a good feeling discovering your body's up and wandered off without you. Ichigo sighs. This was bound to happen sooner or later, but he was hoping for later. Luckily, he finds his body the first place he checks. The hospital wing. Right next to the Slytherin goon, too. There's irony for you. Ichigo opens his eyes and blinks a few times. These days, it takes him a minute to get used to having a body again. For a while, his reaction times are slower, and the air feels stifling and thick. It's annoying, and it's getting worse every year. He doesn't need to be told that that's a bad sign. He sits up, causing Ron, who was sitting beside the bed, to yell Patera. "We thought you were dead!" he cries, while I'm breathing and moving around. Ichigo points out. So either I was never dead or I'm a really mellow zombie, and either way, you can calm down. Why am I in the hospital wing? Because we thought you were dead, Granger says severely. When we checked on you, we couldn't find a pulse. Why were you even awake to check on me? Ichigo asks irritably. It's like 1 a.m. He notes that he's wearing a hospital gown and starts hunting for his clothes and trying not to wonder who stripped him. At least they left his underwear on. At least there's that. We were going to see Hagrid, Granger hisses, enraged by his attitude. Ichigo briefly wonders if he should know who Hagrid is, then decides that, on balance, he doesn't care. Okay, and you all decided to check on me because we thought you might like to go with us. Potter explains impatiently. Hagrid lives outside the castle, and, well, we thought you wouldn't want us outside without you. Oh! Ichigo surprised and pleased by this show of common sense. Did you end up going anyway? After we brought you here, yes. Potter says. Ichigo gives him a disappointed look, and Potter scowls. We tried, he snaps. I guess you did. Ichigo allows, but for future reference, this usually only lasts an hour or two. Next time, wait for me. Fine. Potter mutters dubiously. Thanks for coming back to watch over me, though. Frankly, Ichigo didn't think they had the kind of relationship that made for overnight hospital visits, or vigils over the dead, if that's what they thought they were doing. He's touched that they bothered. Really though, mate, you were dead quiet and dead still. Ron puts in, eyes wide and horrified with the memory. I never said you'd been like that since he came up to bed. He didn't know anybody else was in the room at first, but then he saw you and he wasn't sure you were even breathing. And he was too afraid to make sure. Potter frowns in disapproval. Not a lot of points. Ichigo says in defense of Longbottom, finally discovering his pajamas in a drawer and triumphantly pulling them out. If I wasn't breathing when he came up to the room and it took him a few minutes to notice me, I definitely would have been dead by then. No sense rushing when you're dealing with a corpse. Ichigo pulls his pajama bottoms on under his hospital gown. Yes, and about that? Granger says, then cuts herself off with a gasp when Ichigo exchanges the hospital gown for his tank top. Ichigo! Yeah? Where did you get all those scars? Around. I'm kind of a reckless person, and that leaves you scarred up after a while. Right, Potter? Sure. Potter agrees, dazed and blinking. Ron looks shocked and appalled too. It's like they think Ichigo hasn't noticed their scars. Okay, so let's get back to the dorm before anything else stupid happens. What happened to you? Granger demands, scurrying along in Ichigo's wake, not to be deterred. You were dead, Ichigo! No breathing! No pulse! Still warm, though. Ichigo points out absently. Seems like a stasis kind of thing. Don't worry about it, you've got bigger problems. Were you hibernating? Ron asks, morbidly fascinated. Sort of. Ichigo considers. Not really. And now you can stop asking, or I can start lying. Madame Pomfrey will do her nut when she sees you're gone. Potter informs him with the wisdom of experience. She'll kill you herself. and I'll run away from her really, really fast, thereby proving that I'm healthy. Ichigo counters. Tried that, Potter says. Won't make a difference. Then I'm living dangerously, I guess. Ichigo's just not that intimidated by Madame Pomfrey. Once you've been treated by Captain Unohana, no other medical professional can scare you ever again. I'll deal with it. Your funeral, Potter mutters. Ichigo's day starts far, far too early the next morning, considering how late his night was, that it's Sunday, and that he was awakened by a long and angry lecture from Madame Pomfrey. Probably made worse by the fact that she had to come and find him in order to deliver it. Still better than any of his dad's wake-up techniques, though. It's not until Tuesday that Ichigo gets to meet Hagrid, who turns out to be a Jidanbo-sized man who's quite recently been beaten by somebody. Potter and Ron love him. Granger worries over him. The Weasley twins admire his style. Ichigo's afraid already, and that's before the guy's class starts. A class which involves the freaky hollow horses from the beginning of term. Turns out you can only see the horses if you've watched someone die. This means that every single friend Ichigo has could see them, but apparently only a handful of kids in this class can. That strikes Ichigo as unfair. So unfair, in fact, that he's in a pretty foul mood even before Umbridge comes along and starts talking to Hagrid exactly the same way she talks to Ichigo. Like they're particularly slow dogs. Seeing as Ichigo is both bored and at the limit of his patience with everything in general, he decides some retaliation is in order. That evening after classes, he gets the Weasley twins to do something creative in the Great Hall and uses the distraction to break into the office Umbridge is currently sharing with Binns. He then systematically destroys every single thing that belongs to her, while leaving all of Binns' stuff untouched, just in case Umbridge has started to think she was safe if she shared. Ichigo figures Binns will forgive him for the door, or at least Binns will be too terrified to complain about the door. Umbridge freaks out. Ichigo feels a glowing sense of accomplishment. On the 1st of December, the day after the Weasley twins practically blow up the Great Hall, and someone destroys all of Umbridge's belongings again, there is yet another educational decree, number 27. It gives Umbridge supreme authority over all punishments and a little group of student thugs to do her dirty work. They're called the Inquisitorial Squad, answerable only to the Hogwarts High Inquisitor, Malfoy. Of course, is the very first person to sign up. No one but Ichigo Kurosaki finds any of this amusing in the slightest. Ichigo, on the other hand, finds it amusing enough for everyone, and Hermione is never going to forgive him for that. This is good, Ichigo announces the day the decree goes up, as if it isn't entirely his fault. In what way could this possibly be considered good? Hermione demands, and she may sound a little shrill. She may, but she thinks she's within her rights, considering. They're openly breaking the rules, Ichigo answers calmly. Means they're scared. And if they're breaking the rules this badly, then we don't have to play by the rules anymore either. Swords drawn, basically. No more lying. Makes things simple. Hermione hides her face in her hands so she doesn't have to see Harry and Ron looking impressed by the logic, the silly fools. You were the one who broke the rules first, if you recall, Ichigo. She reminds him, voice muffled. No blood quills were the first broken rule. I just escalated. And now they're escalating more, Hermione cries, pointing accusingly, infuriated. Yeah, but they're limited in what they could do. They can't start killing students. Their whole game would fall apart. But I'm not limited. I can do whatever I want. Hermione thinks she's beginning to understand why Ichigo's employers are happy to ship him off to Scotland for a few years despite his obvious fighting skills. You are not going to kill anyone, she orders him fiercely. I'm not, he agrees. But they don't know that. Hermione gives a stifled scream of rage because this is what Ichigo's driven her to. Incoherence! You should calm down, he says with a pleased smirk that Hermione would dearly love to cut off his face. All this rage must be bad for your blood pressure. Well, what's this? Cuts in Malfoy, who apparently snuck up on them while Hermione was distracted with mutilation fantasies. You can speak English, he accuses gleefully. I'll have to talk 5 points from Gryffindor for lying to the High Inquisitor. That hurts me. Ichigo says in a bored tone. He taps his chest. Right here. Hermione really is going to kill him. She's going to kill him herself. Malfoy isn't allowed to steal that privilege. She's earned it. Only teachers can take house points, Malfoy. Ron snarls. You're just a prefect. Oh, but I'm not just a prefect, Weasley. Malfoy says with a disgustingly self-satisfied expression. I'm a member of the Inquisitorial Squad, and members of the Inquisitorial Squad, I think you'll find, have the full confidence of the Hogwarts High Inquisitor, and can dock as many points as we like. So it's 5 from the foreigner for lying to the High Inquisitor, 5 for contradicting me, Weasley, 5 because I don't like you, Potter. Oh yeah, I forgot, you're a mumbler, Granger, so 10 off for that. Ichigo appears to be on the brink of choking on repressed laughter, and Hermione dearly wishes he would. It occurs to her that under normal circumstances, she would be entirely occupied with hating Malfoy and being concerned about the future of Hogwarts. As it stands, though, most of her mind is far too busy wishing terrible things on Ichigo to have time for anything else. There's another sin to lay at Ichigo's feet. He's ruined her priorities. Ichigo understands that no matter how funny this is, if he actually laughs out loud, Granger will kill him. But it's so hard to resist. You can't take points, Potter insists, because Potter and reality are barely passing acquaintances. I just did, Potter, the blonde kid says, delighted as he can be, gesturing across the hall to the house point crystal things. Apparently, people actually memorize how high they are because everybody but Ichigo gasps in shock. As I said, I'm a member of the Inquisitorial Squad, and the Inquisitorial Squad is the only part of this school the Ministry of Magic considers truly reliable. He has a little badge in the shape of an eye, which he flashes proudly at this point. He's somehow even worse than Ishida with his freaking capes. And since this showdown is happening in the middle of a hallway before a meal, it's starting to attract a crowd. The blonde kid, Ichigo's noticed, seriously loves a crowd. He starts hamming it up even more for the benefit of said crowd, which makes it even harder not to laugh. Just all the blathering about upstanding members of society versus blood traitor and bloody blah blah blah. It is at this moment that Granger snaps and starts screaming out every single one of the blonde kid's character defects for the entire hallway to hear, which charms everyone except the Slytherins. Nope, wait, a few of the Slytherins seemed a bit charmed as well, though they're trying their best to hide it. Sure, house loyalty is a thing, but on the other hand, the most easily entertained kids in school are going to say no to a good show, aren't they? And what are you laughing at, Ichigo? Granger demands fiercely, interrupting her own rant. Sorry. He waves a hand apologetically. It's just, he's so excited about his shiny badge. I can't. The blonde kid draws himself up to his not especially impressive height. 5 points from each of you for disrespecting a member of the Inquisitorial Squad. He hisses. Don't listen to what anybody tells you, kid. That shiny badge is worth every penny. Ichigo informs him. 10 points! The kid insists. Ichigo! Granger cuts in, shocked. What? I think I can get us into negative points by the end of the day. Who believes in me? Oh, I believe, says Dean Thomas, who sidled up to stand beside Ichigo about halfway through the Granger rant. Dean Thomas is a very quiet guy, and therefore Ichigo's favorite kind of person. Ichigo nods approvingly at him, wishing he'd been assigned to bodyguard Thomas. Life would have been so much easier. The blonde kid doesn't quite stamp his foot in rage, but he clearly really wants to. Ichigo's almost starting to like this kid, actually. What's his name again? Malfoy? He's the most ridiculous living human Ichigo's met in a long time. Sadly, the bell rings for class at this point, and the show's over. But not for long, surely. Ichigo has high hopes for his Malfoy-based future entertainment prospects. After the advent of the Inquisitorial Squad, Ichigo decides the Slytherins can't be evil, not really. After all, the most obnoxious among them now have an unfair amount of power and they're only using it for petty, stupid stuff. This means they're not evil. They're just brats, and even brats deserve a fighting chance at survival. So the Slytherins need training like everybody else. Ichigo does understand, though, that Slytherins can't be in the DA because they'd rat Potter out so fast they wouldn't even get one practice in. In view of that, Ichigo decides the best plan is to train them without telling them he's training them, and the easiest way to go about that is to randomly attack them between classes. Maybe Goatface wasn't wrong about everything after all. The random attacks work out variously. Some of the smarter Slytherins pick up on what he's doing right away. The tall, skinny kid who can see thestrals, for one. His name is Not, and Ichigo likes him because he's a quick study in general. He starts openly asking for pointers after attack number 3. Zabini and Greengrass are right behind him. Attack 4. Malfoy is never going to figure it out, and he's never going to forgive Ichigo for it either. It's hilarious. He may actually be learning more than the rest combined, though, just because he's so determined to maim Ichigo. And yeah, at first he tried to hide behind his goons, but it was easy to persuade the Weasley twins to take the goons out of the picture at least once a week. In fact, the twins seemed delighted to have the excuse. In the absence of goons, Malfoy tried running, but Ichigo wouldn't let him. Then he claimed his father would make Ichigo sorry, but Ichigo sincerely doubted that. Finally, he tried pleading for mercy, but since Ichigo's actually doing him a favor by attacking him, that went nowhere. Surprisingly, when his back's completely against a wall, Malfoy's pretty tough. Utterly vicious, too. As far as Malfoy is concerned, the rules of engagement are for other people. Seeing as the fights are never Malfoy's choice, Ichigo guesses he can respect that. He's calling the whole experiment a success. Unfortunately, nobody else feels that way except maybe the smarter Slytherins and the Weasley twins who love chaos for the sake of chaos. Also Luna, because she thinks about everything at 45 degrees to everyone else. His bodyguard subjects, though, they don't like it at all. "What are you doing?" Granger demands about 3 weeks into the great Slytherin training experiment. "Playing with the Slytherins?" Ichigo suggests. "Their parents are Death Eaters," Potter tells him severely. "They're the enemy. You're supposed to be my bodyguard, and you're training the enemy." "I doubt they're all Death Eaters, kid," Ichigo argues, annoyed, though he is slightly amused that Potter recognized random attacks as training. And even if they were, if it comes down to a fight, you don't want boring opponents, do you? Where's the fun in that? Plus, this is keeping them too busy for their normal petty stuff. You should be thanking me. There is a long silence. "Bonkers," Ron says finally in a hushed, almost reverent tone. "He's mental. He is howling mad. How have we not noticed this before?" "Congratulations on noticing," Ichigo tells him. "And now that we've talked that out, it's time for Defense Club, right?" "How am I supposed to trust you?" Potter asks, hopeless. "You're practically training my executioners." "Wow, I think you seriously overestimate the skills of the Slytherin kids," Ichigo says. "Also their uniformity of thought." "You're training Malfoy," Granger puts in accusingly. "He actually does believe everyone not from a pure-blooded family doesn't deserve to use magic, and quite possibly doesn't deserve to live, either. It's no hearsay. He's told me so himself. Repeatedly." Ichigo shrugs. He's had people telling him he shouldn't exist for most of his life. He doesn't get that worked up about it anymore. Yeah, well, prejudiced assholes are easier to take down than anybody. They're forever underestimating the wrong people for the wrong reasons. You just throw someone they think is inferior at them and sit back and watch the show. Malfoy thinks you don't deserve magic? Kick his butt. It'll be funny. Granger blinks, momentarily swayed. But then she remembers the thread of her original argument and scowls. "You're still training Malfoy!" "It's no fun beating up weaklings. I train you too, and I'm telling you, you can take Malfoy down easy. He learns fast, but not as fast as you." She looks so confused, like she doesn't know whether to be flattered or totally enraged. Thing is, as young as these Slytherin kids are, Ichigo bets most of them are still flexible enough in their thinking that they can be talked into dropping, or at least easing up on their pure blood supremacy bullshit. After all, Ichigo's no pure-blooded wizard, and he kicks their butts every day of the week and twice on Sundays. Nuts already picked up on the dissonance of that, and so has Greengrass. In Ichigo's experience, most enemies are just friends who haven't had good sense beaten into them yet. Though Malfoy admittedly is pretty resistant to good sense of any kind, he learned fighting skills fast, but obvious social facts seem beyond him. Still, surprise attacking Malfoy is hilarious, and they can't take that from Ichigo. He needs all the entertainment he can get. Anyway, even Malfoy's less trouble than, say, Grimmjow. We're gonna be late for defense, Ichigo points out, which is pretty stupid since we're teaching it. Can we save the philosophical debates for later? Ichigo gives it even odds that someday Granger's actually going to punch him in the face. It'll probably be good for her stress levels. He's sort of looking forward to it. Sort of also not looking forward to it, though, because Granger studies this stuff and she'll make sure it seriously hurts. He should stop messing with Granger and save himself the pain, he guesses. But at the end of the day, that's just not in him. Defense Club goes as usual, which is to say Ichigo narrowly avoids being blown up by the Weasley twins, gets buried under a coordinated pack of feral Ravenclaws, and starts to wonder if Hannah Abbott is actually all human, because seriously, how does she keep getting back up? Good times, basically. Though he'd be enjoying it more if he didn't know there was another lecture on the evils of Slytherins waiting for him the instant practice was over. Happily, the lecture gets delayed when the girl Potter has a crush on decides she wants to talk to him alone after practice. Granger and Ron sidle off because they're good friends, but Ichigo's allegedly Potter's bodyguard, so Kid gets a chaperone whether anybody likes it or not. Ichigo's desire to make Potter feel awkward isn't quite strong enough to keep him in the room, though, so he lurks in the hallway and half hopes somebody will come along and buzz him for being out after curfew. That would give him a few hours of free entertainment. Maybe he'd even get expelled, and then they'd have to send somebody else to do the stupid job. Toshiro! But no. Instead, after a boring but not especially long wait, the girl Potter has a crush on comes running out of the room in tears. Ichigo's no expert on romance, but that doesn't seem like a great sign. Potter staggers out a little while later, looking upset and bewildered. Ichigo decides to cut the kid some slack and not comment. He just silently follows Potter in his aimless curfew-defying wanderings around the castle for the next 10 minutes until Potter eventually says, "She kissed me," in a traumatized voice, and then burst into tears. Potter must be some kind of lousy kisser. "She was crying before," Potter explains with the careful precision of someone who realizes he has no idea what he's talking about and is therefore sticking religiously to the facts. "Because her boyfriend died last year, Cedric, and then she kissed me, and then she started crying again." Well, that sounds like a whole lot of nothing Ichigo wants to get involved in. "That sucks," he says. "Yeah." Potter agrees. "We should go back to the common room," Ichigo suggests, so Granger can explain what just happened. "Okay." Potter agrees. Potter's in a very agreeable mood is the clearest sign of his messed up mental state. Granger does, in fact, have an explanation for what happened. As far as Ichigo can tell, it boils down to the girl having no business kissing anybody until she's less of a disaster in herself. That's not Granger's conclusion, but that's Ichigo's conclusion, given Granger's premise. Ron immediately asks Potter if he's terrible at kissing. Ichigo feels gratified that that was someone else's first thought, too. The trio spend the rest of the evening worrying about people's love lives. It seems like a waste of effort, but it does mean they forget to lecture Ichigo on Slytherins, so for that alone, Ichigo approves. Still weird, though. God knows, Ichigo's never spent much time worrying about his own love life. He's always had more pressing concerns. What's the point of worrying about romance when you doubt you'll be alive to enjoy it? Besides, like so many other things about his life and afterlife, his love life kind of became a foregone conclusion once Rukia showed up. She's waiting, he knows, until she can jump him without feeling like a pedophile. Problem is, with Shinigami, that could mean anywhere from 2 to 50 years before he sees any action. But whatever. He'll start complaining if the wait gets too annoying. The only thing he's unclear on is whether or not Renji's somehow part of this deal. Ichigo's a little unsure about the idea that he might be part of it, but then again kind of disappointed by the idea that he might not be. Not that Ichigo's opinion is required. He figures he and Renji are both planning to shut up and do what Rukia tells them on the issue. It's easier that way. So yeah. Romantic angsting is foreign to him. He feels like everyone should just calm down and let, say, Luna arrange their love lives. Is what he'd do if he'd grown up with Luna. If nothing else, the results would be interesting. Ichigo makes it back from reporting to Toshiro early that night, which turns out to be lucky because no sooner does he get back than Potter has an awful screaming nightmare of the type you rarely see for people who aren't war veterans. This is far from Potter's first screaming nightmare this year, and no wonder given what his life is like. But it's the worst one Ichigo's seen, probably because it turns out to be less a nightmare and more a horrifying vision of the Weasley's dad being murdered. Although Ichigo might wish, as the kid's bodyguard, that he'd chosen another way to explain this than saying, I was there, I saw it, I did it, in front of Finnegan, who already thinks Potter's murderously insane. It was a huge snake. Potter rambles frantically on, and Ichigo thinks about the room of requirements hints, thinks about rings and cups and lockets, and a little stuffed snake, and a little human doll. He wonders if Potter's ever dreamed he's Tom Riddle. He thinks he'll save that question for later, though, for a time when Potter isn't on the verge of a breakdown and also surrounded by potentially hostile roommates. Or maybe he'll just save that question for never because he doesn't want to know. You mean you dreamed this? McGonagall asks when she gets dragged into the room, but Potter insists it was no dream. And oddly, McGonagall turns to Ichigo for confirmation. Ichigo nods agreement with Potter. That was definitely not a normal dream. It wasn't even a normal screaming nightmare. Ichigo's had enough experience with them to know. And in any case, Potter has a weird green thread in his spirit ribbon. I believe you, Potter, McGonagall announces. Then she hauls Potter and Ron and even Ichigo off to see Dumbledore. Ichigo assumes he's included because McGonagall expects Potter to need bodyguarding in the near future. And yeah, it'll be nice if the stalking goat gambit finally pays off. But Ichigo wishes there'd been a little less psychological trauma involved in the process. Potter tells his story again in Dumbledore's office, and Dumbledore also looks to Ichigo for confirmation. What the heck? Then proceeds to be just as shady and mysterious and unhelpful as he can be, because this is clearly the time to mess with Potter's trust and confidence. Kid looks like he's ready to scream from frustration and terror, and who could blame him? The rest of the Weasleys are brought in to join Ron, expressions ranging from shock to terror. They all sit together in a silent, suffocating limbo that Ichigo recognizes from countless awful nights in the waiting room of the clinic, but thankfully not from personal experience. In this one way, he's been lucky. His loved ones have always either died outright or suffered in such a way that he could do something about it. He's never had to deal with this kind of terrified, helpless waiting. The teachers are all babbling about flu networks and portkeys and other things that sound like English but mean nothing to Ichigo. He decides to just ignore them, ignore the miserable kids, and try his very best not to think. Or at least that's his plan until Dumbledore randomly grabs his shoulder and informs him that the Order of the Phoenix can be found at number 12 Grimmauld Place. Whatever that means. Okay. Ichigo really wonders about this man sometimes.
Have you ever used a portkey before, my boy?
Dumbledore demands, getting all in his face about it. But because Ichigo has learned some self-control, despite what everyone he knows believes, he does not punch the old man in the gut. No, why?
We'll need to use one to make our way to Order headquarters. As you are Harry's bodyguard, I'd appreciate it if you were to accompany us, if you're willing.
Yeah, I'll go. Potter's going to need all the help he can get, what with his tainted soul thread talking to him and whatnot, and he's not going to get it from the Weasleys because they are understandably way too busy with their own problems right now. It turns out that Ichigo hates portkeys, but he doesn't hate them as much as he hates the dang guy, so there's that at least. The portkey takes them to some dungeon-like hellhole of a kitchen occupied by a deranged elf and a scruffy drunk who's apparently Sirius Black. Ichigo's been teleported to better places. As soon as they arrive in the dungeon kitchen, the Weasleys force Potter to rehash his awful vision in detail, though Ichigo notices that now, when he's surrounded by allies, the kid belatedly decides not to mention that he was the snake in said vision. He's giving Ichigo a headache. The Weasley kids obviously want to storm the hospital. Black obviously wants them to not do that and suggests drunkenness to pass the time, since that's clearly been working out so well for him. So they sit around and drink, though it's sadly not as alcoholic as Ichigo had been hoping. The wait is long, horrible, and awkward, especially for Potter, who's silently blaming himself more fiercely with each passing second. Ichigo can tell by the way his fidgeting keeps moving him closer to Ichigo and further from the Weasleys, like he thinks the Weasleys might collectively turn on him and attack. like he thinks they'd be right to. When they finally get news, it's that there is no news. Unless, well, kids, he's not dead yet, counts as news. Ichigo doesn't think it does. The waiting turns into an all-night vigil, which Ichigo participates in silently, trying to draw as little attention to himself as possible. This is a disaster he has no place in, and if he actually has to sit here and watch while this family loses their father, he's going right back to Soul Society and he's going to choke Kyoraku to death. It's 5 in the morning when the Weasley's mom shows up, exhausted and worn down, but wildly happy despite that, like there's a light burning inside her. It turns out no Weasleys are dying today, so Ichigo won't have to kill Kyoraku after all. That's the upside. The downside is when Miss Weasley thanks Potter for the warning, and he looks like she's just stabbed him repeatedly in the stomach, still blaming himself for everything. Then, Ichigo has a wonderful feeling that this problem, too, will come to bite him in the butt eventually. Black and Miss Weasley start bustling around and making breakfast, and Black eventually counts his guests and comes up with an extra. "Oh, hello," he says, startled. "Who are you?" "The bodyguard," Ichigo explains. Under normal circumstances, he'd be offended that he sat at a table with a guy all night and didn't get noticed, but these really weren't normal circumstances. Plus, he kind of blends in with the Weasleys, which is a first in his life. Blending in. Black blinks at Ichigo, still at a loss, then brightens abruptly. "Oh, Ichigo! I'll remember you, the security guy." "That's right," Ichigo thinks, "the one who was absolutely right when you were dead wrong." Black, of course, makes no mention of that. "Still staying for Christmas?" he asks instead. "If you'll still have me. I mean, I know you invited me, but I promised some friends I'd spend time with them over the break. Is it okay if they come here too, or should I go to them?" "Oh, no problem. They can come in. The more the merrier, frankly," Black assures him. "This place is under the Fidelius charm, though, so Dumbledore will have to give them the address. But they're welcome any time, for as long as they like." So he's a lonely, scruffy drunk. Awesome. It's at this point that Potter drags Black off for a secret family meeting, and Ichigo allows it. If Potter isn't safe in a safe house, he just can't be helped. Ichigo figures he deserves a break from bodyguarding long enough to relax and eat some breakfast anyway. Last night sucked. Potter, of course, doesn't know the meaning of the word relax. It quickly becomes apparent that he's planning to spend all of nap time staring in horror at a wall instead of actually, napping. After half an hour of this, Ichigo feels like he's obligated to do something about it, both as a bodyguard and as the son of a doctor. "Okay, what is your problem now, Potter?" he demands, exasperated, then belatedly wonders if he should have tried to sound more sympathetic. "Nothing," Potter whispers frantically. "Go to sleep." "Right. Ichigo will have to work it out himself then. Shouldn't be too hard, though. Potter's pretty transparent. He obviously blames himself for what happened to Papa Weasley. He thought he was the snake last night. So in that case, given the way Potter's mind works, are you afraid you'll turn into a snake and kill everybody while you're sleeping?" Potter starts guiltily, looks away, and says in the world's most unconvincing voice, "No." Ichigo sighs and sits up. The fear of turning into a monster and accidentally killing your friends is one he understands far, far too well. It's not often he completely gets where Potter's coming from, but sadly this is one of those times. "Go to sleep," he tells Potter. "I'll stand watch. I need to sleep less. Lack of sleep stunts your growth, and I think we can both agree you can't afford that." "Hey," Potter mumbles indignant. "And if you turn into a snake while you're sleeping, I'll kill you myself before I let you hurt anybody else." Potter studies his face, looking for lies and finding none. Ichigo would kill him if it were necessary. It just won't be necessary. If Potter turns into a snake, Ichigo will forcibly relocate him until he gets his stuff together and stops being a snake. No sense in troubling Potter's mind with the details, though. Potter might ask him how he'd do it, and Ichigo can't be bothered to come up with a convincing lie about that. Once Potter decides Ichigo's serious about killing him if necessary, he looks heartbreakingly grateful and falls asleep in a minute flat. This bodyguard gig is depressing. In the afternoon, the kids go to the hospital to visit Papa Weasley, but since they have 2 magical cops going with them, it's agreed that Ichigo can stay at Sirius's place and call Rukia instead of tagging along, so he does that. Which is maybe a mistake, because Rukia is way too entertained by it. "You let your stocking go won't escape? She cries gleefully. You're terrible at this. So what, was I supposed to explain that he's my stalking goat? Ichigo demands. They didn't need me as a bodyguard. Anyway, Tom obviously has a long-term plan going on. There's no way he's attacking Potter today. I should be so lucky. Rukia laughs at him. It takes Ichigo a stupidly long time to get her to stop laughing long enough to tell her his current location. He doesn't mind calling Rukia in the middle of the night and waking her up, but he wouldn't do that to his sisters, so after that one call, he's left twiddling his thumbs and fretting until Potter and company get back from the hospital. The whole situation is ridiculous. But the kids all come back fine, eventually. Papa Weasley's also fine. Tom didn't decide to ruin Ichigo's day by taking this time to attack. Things seem good, so Ichigo can't figure out why everybody looks freaked out and miserable. It takes Ichigo an hour to get the twins to admit that Potter's worried he's possessed by Tom. Then Ginny Weasley, who Ichigo hasn't talked to since the train, treats him to a lecture on how Potter can't be possessed because she's been possessed by Tom and knows all about it. Ichigo immediately rechecks her spirit ribbon. It's fine, so that's a relief. He chooses not to mention to her, for the sake of house harmony and also his own personal safety, that there are a lot of different kinds of possession and mind control, and various people may experience them, well, variously. Instead, he leaves Ginny and goes to check on Potter, who's taken to hiding in a room with some freaky magical monster called Buckbeak, because the kid is made of good life choices. But at least he hasn't managed to sulk himself to death. Yeah. That said, Ichigo's had to reassure him 5 separate times that he'll really honestly kill him if it comes to that. This promise cheers Potter up every time, which conversely is doing nothing for Ichigo's mood. Fortunately, Granger shows up before the situation can get too stupidly miserable, and she and Ginny join forces to scream Potter happy. Lucky guy. Rukia is more of a believer in punching Ichigo happy. Sometimes there's also kicking and stabbing and throwing him into the path of oncoming monsters until he cheers up. And Tatsuki is no better. Potter doesn't know how easy he has it. Rukia, Renji, and Toshiro show up just one day after Granger. It immediately turns into a circus, so it's lucky that only Black and Ichigo are downstairs when they arrive. It's a very welcome circus, though, because it takes Ichigo's mind off of his lousy bodyguard skills. Besides, messing with wizards is never not fun. There is no way you could have found this place on your own, Black says with flat horror and in the face of the evidence. This house is under a Fidelius charm, among other things. Ichigo dutifully translates this, then does his limited best to explain what a Fidelius charm is. Oh, says Renji. Is that what that bubble thing was? We did knock. Rukia points out defensively, still confused as to what the problem is. She shoves a gift into Black's hands as if trying to prove she's polite. Black accepts it with a baffled stare. It looks like they busted through the charm without realizing what it was. Ichigo explains to Black. Don't tell the kids. They'll be all weird about it. I'm going to be weird about it. They broke through a Fidelius charm. You can't just... No one can just... These wizarding types really seem to think that hiding from death is easy. Almost as if someone told them it was. Is there food? Rukia cuts in, apparently fresh out of patience. It's a long trip. Renji lies because he'll do a lot to be fed. What are they saying? What are you people? Black hisses, sounding slightly unbalanced. Toshiro says nothing, but he's looking more pleased by the second that he turned this job down. It's the best argument for being a captain Ichigo's seen yet, having the authority to delegate the crappy jobs. Toshiro's the only one here other than Ichigo who can speak English for whatever random reason, so we could have taken charge of this explanation if he'd wanted to, but no. Instead, the assholes over there being all, me no speak this country language. Not that Ichigo can say anything about that. Look, Ichigo puts in before this spirals out of control. Ask Dumbledore. He knows all about it, so he can be the one to explain. You're more likely to believe him anyway. Black looks like he has a thing or two to say in response to that, but fortunately the kids take that moment to charge down the stairs en masse with Christmas decorations, and Black bites his tongue. Because this whole house is a conspiracy of not telling anyone under 20 anything worth knowing. Maybe they figure it's better for kids to die ignorant than live scared. As messed up as the wizarding world is, Ichigo wouldn't put it past them. Oh! Granger cries happily. Are these your friends, Ichigo? He allows that they are, so Granger casts her translating spell, and Ichigo does the introductions. Then he does them again when Miss Weasley appears, and one more time when Lupin shows up. If anybody else rolls in after that, Ichigo's letting them figure out who everybody is on their own. Lupin's a funny one. He slunk into the house sometime when Ichigo wasn't paying attention, and now he's blending like he's been here all along. Apparently he's Black's friend from way back, but he reminds Ichigo of the Vizard for some reason. Not any Vizard in particular, just it seems like he'd fit in with them. Ichigo isn't sure why. Maybe he should read his intro packet again. That might give him a clue. Soon enough, Toshiro's chatting quietly with Lupin, which is fine. Renji's bonding with Ron over food, which is a little worrying. And Rukia has entered into a full-on sisterhood pact with Ginny Weasley, which is terrifying. But it's nice everybody's getting along. If Hermione had ever pictured Ichigo having friends, she wouldn't have pictured friends like this. She should have, though. She sees that now. Given that Ichigo's favorite people at Hogwarts include Luna Lovegood and the Weasley twins, this group shouldn't have come as a surprise. Clearly, Ichigo prefers spending time with people who don't respect him at all. But no, that's not quite right, is it? Because for all that his friends are every kind of bossy and irreverent, they do respect Ichigo. Maybe the truth is that he prefers spending time with people who aren't afraid of him at all, and Hermione can hardly blame him for that. Rukia is delightful, and she and Ginny are best friends already. They've bonded on the strength of a shared love of causing mayhem and blaming others. Renji is a little frightening, but seems good-hearted. A bit like Sirius that way, but without Sirius's mood swings. And then there's the little white-haired boy, Toshiro, who acts much older than he looks and generally makes no sense, but is very well-read and a good conversationalist when he feels like making conversation. Of course, when he doesn't feel like making conversation, he just stares at you with his icy green eyes until you're sorry you ever approached him. It's making Ichigo seem more like a real person and less like a machine of destruction. The realization that he has friends. And family, too, come to think of it. A father and sisters. He's mentioned them before, the sisters more fondly than the father. And yet he isn't spending the holidays with them. He's guarding Harry instead. Hermione feels guilty that none of this crossed her mind before, and she finally forces herself to mention it at their Christmas Eve lunch. You have sisters, don't you, Ichigo? She asks hesitantly, and when Ichigo nods, she goes on, encouraged. Didn't you want to visit them for the holidays? I can't. I've got to guard Potter's body, Ichigo says, not seeming very upset about it. Ron, the twins, and disappointingly Sirius all snicker at the turn of phrase. As usual, Hermione can't tell whether or not Ichigo meant it the way it sounded. And if she asks, he'll just pretend he doesn't understand the question. The brat. Well, they could come here, couldn't they? Hermione persists, like your friends did. No way am I involving my little sisters in the crazy that is Potter's life, Ichigo says firmly. After a moment he adds, no offense, Matt Potter. None taken, Harry replies faintly. Poor Harry. Surely they could have chosen someone else to be Harry's bodyguard, Hermione suggests. It seems a very long-term position to give someone with a family they miss. Ichigo shrugs, frustratingly blasé. There actually weren't many options, given how specific the requirements were. If I hadn't been around to get saddled with the job, it would have been Toshiro, and he's got a lot more responsibilities back home than I do. Hermione looks dubiously at Toshiro, who, however mature his behavior, seems far too young to have any responsibilities. But this means he must be the same Toshiro that Ichigo's been reporting to all the time. How odd. And Toshiro could have been the one to bodyguard Harry. Hermione studies him, considering that at the moment he's giving Harry a cold look, his expression suggesting that Harry's continued survival is a matter of supreme indifference to him. Hermione's very glad they got Ichigo instead. And she would never have believed she'd feel that way. Saddled with the job, Harry mutters. Nothing personal, Ichigo says absently. Nobody wants to get stuck with extended duty alone in the so far from home. So, you all live in the same town then? That's how you know each other? Hermione asks, deciding to try a different topic and see if things make more sense that way. No, Ichigo replies, and then doesn't elaborate at all. Then, I'm gonna have to Rukia, Renji tells her, taking pity, because he's clearly a better person than Ichigo is. Rukia and I grew up at the same town. I also met him through Kuchiki. Toshiro puts in, looking amused for some reason. Indirectly. Then, how did you meet Ichigo, Rukia? Hermione asks cautiously, not daring to hope for much at this point. I saved a fool's life, Rukia explains, not bothering to look away from her food. And then I saved your life, Ichigo snaps back, rolling his eyes. We're square. We will never be square, Rukia informs him with malicious delight. I plan to get years of use out of you yet. So right. Ron breaks in before the conversation has a chance to really get interesting. Does this mean you guys are you just friends, or boyfriend and girlfriend, or what? Bizarrely, this question seems to stump them. They study each other curiously for a while, then Ichigo shrugs and says, I don't know. Rukia, what are you to me? Everything, she replies promptly. There you go. Ichigo informs Ron matter-of-factly. She's my everything. Renji chokes on his food, but that's inconclusive. Hermione can't tell what it was about that statement that was shocking to him. There are too many possibilities. The delivery alone was shocking. As always, it's impossible to tell how serious Ichigo is being, and his and Rukia's untroubled faces give nothing away. What is this? Toshiro asks abruptly, staring at the food Miss Weasley's just served him in confusion. It would appear he hasn't been following the conversation for a while, which seems very like him, in fact, at least as far as Hermione can tell from their short acquaintance. It's called Toad in the Hole, Ichigo tells him. I know, but it's actually good, so this isn't even... You should taste what they do to rice at the school. It's not bad, exactly, but it's not... Man, I have no idea. It's uncanny valley rice. Food is food, says Rukia, eating happily. Don't complain, fool. 3 cheers for the outer Rukong guy. Huh. Ichigo murmurs, smiling sadly. Putting things in perspective. The Rukong, Ron asks, frowning in bafflement. It's where Renji and I grew up, Rukia explains, as unbothered as ever. In Unozuri. There's almost no food there. We expected to starve to death. My acquaintance also grew up in that area, Toshiro puts in. She very nearly did starve to death. Now she'll eat anything, including Inoue's cooking. Ichigo shudders. Hermione wonders who Inoue is and also what on earth they're talking about. But Japan is a very wealthy country, she says, utterly confused. Renji shrugs. There's lousy neighborhoods any place you go. Well, yes, that's true, but Hermione wasn't under the impression that Japan had neighborhoods where children could starve to death. In fact, she's almost certain it doesn't. It's also strange how few of Ichigo's friends look, well, traditionally Japanese. There's too much here that doesn't add up, and it's making Hermione uneasy. Mrs. Weasley, who luckily missed most of that conversation, managed to walk by in time to overhear the bit about starving to death, and is now surreptitiously sneaking more food onto the plates of all of Ichigo's friends, which appears to be making Rukia and Renji's entire Christmas on its own. They're certainly behaving like people familiar with food shortages. Hermione is about ready to scream in frustration. Ichigo wakes up on Christmas morning to the feeling of his body trying to attack something without his conscious mind approving the maneuver. It takes him a second to work out what set him off. Apparently, some guy decided to teleport presents onto his bed. Wizards! There is nothing in a single one of those presents that can possibly make up for the panic attack their delivery almost drove him to. He hates this world so much, sometimes. He hears a shout and a roar from down the hall and smiles in satisfaction. That'd be Renji and Rukia then. And no doubt Toshiro's corner of the room is completely iced over. At least it isn't just him. What was that? Potter demands, because he's totally unfazed by stuff crashing onto his bed without warning, but people yelling down the hall worries him. For such a high-strung guy, he doesn't have much in the way of self-preservation instincts. That was Rukia and Renji, Ichigo informs him, killing their presents to death. Ron says faintly, peering out from under his covers. What are the presents done to them exactly? Nothing. It's just that when something randomly fell on their beds, they assumed they were being attacked. The way any normal person would, Ichigo replies. I almost killed my own presents. Potter and Ron give him looks, suggesting their doubt that Ichigo has ever even met a normal person. They may have a point there. As the day began, so it continues, awkward as all get out. It turns out there's just enough culture shift between Western Christmas and Japanese Christmas to make this experience weird for everyone. Like, in theory, Ichigo gets that this holiday is about gift giving and family, like a less structured New Year's, but there's still part of his brain that's telling him it's mainly a romantic holiday, so doing all these stay-home family things seems off. Toshiro and Renji are rolling with the whole business pretty well, but Rukia's given everyone presents wrapped extremely badly in pink paper covered with hearts, which at least succeeds in making everyone else as confused as she obviously is. This is doubly unfair on the Shinigami, really. They've barely finished teaching themselves modern Japanese customs. After the present exchange, weirdness is blessedly over. The Weasleys and Potter go to visit Papa Weasley again, and Rukia somehow manages to convince them that she's extremely interested in wizard hospitals, and therefore she and Ichigo absolutely need to tag along. Ichigo quietly demands to know as they drive to the hospital in an unnaturally expanded car why Rukia felt they needed to see the place. It turns out she actually is extremely interested in wizard hospitals. Ichigo gives that some thought, then immediately feels like an ass. Of course she'd be interested. Her captain randomly coughs up blood some days. What kind of lieutenant would she be if she weren't constantly looking for a way to fix that? Getting into the hospital involves sweet-talking a freaky mannequin and is therefore exactly the kind of creepy thing that Ichigo's come to expect from the wizarding world. Rukia's delighted by the whole mess, of course, and wants to bring a freaky mannequin back home for her brother. There's a faint but horrifying possibility that Byakuya might even appreciate that. Ichigo's trying not to think about it. Not that he can defend his own choices either. After they all see Papa Weasley, Ichigo quickly loses track of both Rukia and the kid he's supposed to be bodyguarding in favor of convincing Mrs. Weasley, and eventually any number of interested doctors, that stitches really are an honest-to-goodness medical treatment and not just a thing used on clothes. Once they discover that Ichigo's father is a Muggle doctor, he becomes the greatest object of interest on the ward. The Weasleys and doctors bombard him with like 500 questions, so devoid of logic. They're going to give him nightmares, and he eventually staggers out of there completely confused as to how wizards ever survive to adulthood. He's complaining about this to Ishida at the earliest opportunity. Ishida will understand his pain. Papa Weasley seems nice, though. A hazard to himself and everyone around him, obviously. But nice. Unfortunately, when Ichigo and Mrs. Weasley catch up with the kids and Rukia, it's obvious that something terrible happened in the few minutes they were left alone. All the kids are weirdly subdued. Not that that would be a big deal on its own. The kids are prone to random mood swings. The problem is that Rukia's subdued too, and that's not okay. What's wrong with you? He asks in a low murmur as they leave the hospital. Nothing's wrong with me, fool. Rukia snaps, rolling her eyes. It's a hospital. You're bound to see terrible things in it, and there's nothing anyone can do. It's depressing. Ichigo's suddenly very glad he failed bodyguard duty and wasn't with them when they saw whatever terrible thing this was. He's seen more than his share of that kind of awful already. Got it. When I get home, I'm sending you a gift to pass along to someone, Rukia informs him. Take care of it for me. Okay. I thought you said there was nothing you could do, though. I can't fix it, Rukia agrees, but I can make it a tiny but less crushingly horrible. Fair enough. Ichigo sometimes wonders if that's secretly the Shinigami job description. But no, it can't be. Look at all the times Shinigami have busily run around making things more crushingly horrible. Stop that! Rukia says, sharply elbowing him in the side, because she's basically a mind reader, and it's weird. They get back to Sirius's place to find that Yoruichi and Urahara showed up while they were out, and it's even more gloriously terrible than when Rukia and Renji and Toshiro showed up. That's because, unlike the other three, Yoruichi and Urahara need to throw people in order to live. And it's not like Renji and Toshiro would try to stop them. Obviously, they know better. When Ichigo walks in, it's to see Yoruichi clinging to Sirius's back like a freakishly strong child, while Sirius chases Urahara around the living room, trying without success to prevent him from messing with every single thing in the house. Don't touch that! Sirius yelps. It's cause you could... Oh yeah, it's fine, touch it. Go on and die. See if I can. I want you to get off of me! Yoruichi just gaggles happily and stays exactly where she is while Urahara twirls the apparently cursed letter opener he's picked up, then makes it disappear up his sleeve, never to be seen again by mortal man. Ichigo's sure. Urahara-san, Yoruichi-san, he says, tired already. Why are you here? He never seems happy to see us, does he, Kisuke? Yoruichi asks with a worrying gleam in her eye. Anyone might start to be offended. Ichigo sighs, then hurriedly grabs Granger's hand when she lifts her wand to cast the translating spell. Don't, he tells her. You don't want to know. I always want to know, she replies blankly, as if she can conceive of no other way to be. Ichigo, who almost never wants to know, rolls his eyes. You think that now. Trust me, they'll find ways to ruin your life even without speaking the same language. Actually, Ichigo knows that Urahara at least can speak English perfectly fluently, and he'd be surprised if Yoruichi couldn't. If they're choosing not to, they must have their reasons. Probably twisty, awful reasons, but still, Ichigo feels like he has to respect them. Ruin my life? Granger asks dubiously. They have a gift, Ichigo assures her. What are you doing here? Rukia demands, folding her arms. I thought you two were supposed to be looking for soul fragments, not slagging off. We are looking, Guchiki-san, Urahara insists, pretending to be wounded. We just needed to consult with Kurosaki-san on a few minor details before continuing our quest. Now seems like a good time, as we won't need to break into a school, and you three can distract these wizards while we confer. Assuming that means with your approval, of course. Rukia scowls, but she can't find anything to legitimately argue with. Renji shrugs and heads to the kitchen because he's got priorities. And Toshiro just sighs and rubs his temples the way he always does when he's forced to deal with Urahara. Upstairs then, Kurosaki-san, Urahara declares, making annoying, hurting gestures. Yoruichi finally releases Sirius and bounds up the stairs ahead of Ichigo, so she already knows which room he's staying in. That's not disturbing at all. Ichigo shuts his door on the sound of Sirius angrily demanding explanations. Now that they've lost their audience, Yoruichi and Urahara are looking unusually grim, which is unnerving. Okay, Ichigo says into the quiet. What's up? Did you find more soul pieces? We did, Yoruichi informs him, then sits on his bed and folds her legs, grabs his pillow, and starts idly kneading it. It's not a great sign that she's fidgeting. But there were complications. Complications? It would appear these magical people have some dangerous hobbies, Urahara says with a manic brightness that means he's very, very angry. The ring the headmaster told us about turned out to be far more than just a soul fragment. It did? And already Ichigo doesn't want to know. Indeed, Kurosaki-san. It had the power to drag the dead unwillingly out of Soul Society, at least temporarily. And when they were once again freed from the living world, well, there was no predicting where they might end up. Oh, well, that's an actual waking nightmare in more ways than Ichigo can count. Exactly, Yoruichi says firmly. Where's the ring now? Ichigo asks. Oh, it's powder, Urahara reassures him. Powder which we've scattered across the North Sea. Still, I think Yoruichi-san and I might point this out to the local Soul Society because apparently they've been letting these wizards run wild for centuries, and if they don't sort themselves out, Yoruichi will absolutely sick Soifan on them. Harsh. Ichigo considers his recent conversation with Dumbledore. But actually, I think the local Soul Society might be part of the problem. Potter's got this cloak that makes him invisible, and there's some kind of legend that says it was a gift from death. It's supposed to make you invisible to death, but I can still feel spiritual pressure through it. Anyway, I figured that cloak might be Shinigami messing with humans. Maybe the ring was the same deal? Urahara and Yoruichi exchange unhappy looks. So fun it is, then, Yoruichi decides.
Perhaps we'll start with Commander Kyoraku,
Urahara suggests thoughtfully.
and when he's done with them, we'll move on to Zoifon.
Psychological destruction, followed by physical destruction. Yoruichi nods approval. I like. Despite everything, Ichigo's starting to feel a little bad for British Soul Society. They have no idea what's headed their way.
But moving away from the problems of the dead and onto the problems of the living, or at least semi-living,
Urahara says, clapping his hands.
this Voldemort character.
Did you know his name's actually Tom? Ichigo asks indignantly. His name is Tom.
Then it's no wonder he changed it, is it?
Urahara laughs.
Not exactly a name to strike terror into the hearts of the enemy.
The great prophesied battle of Tom versus Harry. Ichigo grumbles, it's like a bad joke.
There, once we kill him, you can write whatever punchline you want.
Urahara says consolingly, always at his worst when he's trying to be nice. So you got the ring, Ichigo says, trying to focus. That's good. And I meant to tell you guys, I found this... He chickens out. He can't bring himself to tell Urahara about the room of requirement. The possibilities are just too scary. This guide kind of thing. And according to that, there are 7 soul pieces on top of the one Tom's got in his body. So 8 things we need to destroy altogether. The guy himself, and then a book, a crown, a ring, a cup, a snake, a locket, and Potter. Potter took out the book. You guys took out the ring and the thing in the bank.
That cup,
Urahara clarifies. And I took out the crown.
Ichigo concludes.
So that leaves 4. There's one in this house somewhere, Ichigo, Yoruichi tells him. Other than the Potter kid, that is. That's why we're here. The ring had a thread of spirit ribbon stretching this way, so we knew there was one in this general direction, and now that we're close, we can feel it, but the signature is so weak it's tough to pin down. Still, we're almost down to 2. 3 counting the man himself.
And we have good news about Mr. Potter.
Urahara says brightly.
Upon discussion, and after a better look at what Voldemort is capable of, and at Mr. Potter himself, we've decided that while the 2 souls, or soul and soul fragment, are sharing a body, they haven't melded. They couldn't have without using something like the Hogyoku, and this Voldemort character couldn't manage anything like that. He's a hack when it comes to soul manipulation. A clumsy hack.
So all they need to do is knock them both out of Potter's body? Ichigo asks, suspicious of how easy that sounds. That's right, Yoruichi agrees. The souls should be distinct, so once they're out of the body, you can kill one and shove the other one back in. She pauses for a moment. In theory. Yeah, Ichigo is waiting for something like that. And how am I supposed to explain all this to Potter?
I always find it easier not to explain anything.
Urahara points out, hiding behind his fan. I'm aware of that, Ichigo agrees sourly, but let's assume one of my life goals is to avoid being anything like you. Urahara gasps and clasps a hand melodramatically over his heart. You may not have a choice this time, Ichigo, Yoruichi says, highly amused at everyone's expense. Anything you tell Potter in advance is going to sound so awful he'll run for the hills if he has any sense. He has no sense, Ichigo assures her. None whatsoever. Then his friends will drag him to safety, Yoruichi shrugs. Either way, it'll be easier to strike first and explain later. And there's Yoruichi's life philosophy in a nutshell. Fine. Ichigo sighs. Are we done here? Because it'd be great if you two could find that soul piece and get the heck out before you make my life any worse than it already is. This strains Yoruichi's fragile tolerance past its limits. She dives off the bed and runs out to Ichigo, tackling him to the floor and making a pretty convincing effort to beat him to death. Urahara takes her place on the bed and commences awarding points for style. Sirius bangs on the door and demands to know what the heck they think they're doing in there. This is all exactly what Ichigo was afraid of. Ichigo Kurosaki is the best thing that's ever happened to Fred and George Weasley. They were starting to suspect this even before Christmas, but now they know it for sure because the rest of the circus has arrived. And the circus is amazing! First, there's Rukia, who's as likely to kick people in the face as look at them, and who reminds them delightfully of their own dear sister. Then there's Renji, who's lazy and sarcastic and fun, and yet gives the distinct impression of a man who's killed a lot of people and doesn't feel bad about it. And finally, there's Toshiro, who seems like the model of politeness, but who somehow causes localized temperature drops whenever he's annoyed. They've caught him rage freezing his surroundings on 3 separate occasions so far. They did not even know that was possible, but they're better people for knowing. Whatever the heck species they are, Ichigo's friends are fantastic. But even so, they pale beside Ichigo's teachers. Ichigo's teachers are purest chaos in humanoid form, and Fred and George just want to be them. Reckless, devious, dangerous, and apparently impervious to cursed objects. Ichigo's teachers haven't been in the house an hour before they've entirely destroyed any sort of order in the place. Mom is more or less prepared for this kind of thing in as much as she's lived with Freddy George for years, but poor old Sirius's sanity is taking an especially hard hit. Not that Sirius's sanity was ever anything to write home about, but he usually hides it better than this. For Harry's sake. Ichigo's teachers don't stick around long, but they fit so much evil brilliance into that small amount of time, it's inspiring. Tormenting Sirius, who can apparently dish it out, but not take it. Messing about with and or stealing loads of cursed stuff. Dragging Ichigo upstairs and then, from the sound of it, flinging him violently around the room. Chasing Creature around the house like cats chasing a mouse, and then ultimately abducting him, much to Sirius's confused delight. Causing Toshiro to rage freeze an entire room with just one murmured sentence. They're perfect beings. Ichigo's teachers have already taught Fred and George so much. It would be selfish to ask for more. They know that, but they're still so sad to see them leave. On the other hand, Ichigo seems delighted to see them leave. He's also been quite adamant about Hermione not casting her translating spell on them, which is such a waste. He shoves them out the door while saying something sharp in Japanese in response to what is clearly whining, and the twins would love to know the details. But alas, Ichigo doesn't appreciate the riches he has, obviously. The twins may actually have to learn Japanese just on the off chance that they'll run into Ichigo's teachers again one day. We're leaving too, Rukia announces as soon as the door shuts behind the world's most amazing teachers. Thank you for your hospitality, Mr. Black. And then Ichigo's friends all bow to Sirius, who looks utterly taken aback. Well, already? Ron demands, turning a betrayed look on Renji, who straightens up, shrugs, and moseys into the kitchen to steal more food. Now that the twins know he almost starved to death at one point, his food obsession makes perfect depressing sense. They're not sure they like that. They miss the old days when it was funny. Aren't you staying for the rest of the holiday? Jenny asks sadly. She'll miss her colleague in chaos, and who can blame her? The twins are sad themselves. We have to get back to work, Rukia tells her, apologetic but businesslike, because some of us have honest work to do. She continues, turning scary eyes on Ichigo. Some of us don't have months and months free to frolic around Britain. I swear to God, I will kick your butt all the way back to Japan. Ichigo informs her. You bullied me into this. Remember, I was bullied. It's difficult to picture Ichigo being bullied, but if anyone could do it, Rukia could. And what did he almost say before he said Japan? Ichigo is such a fun puzzle. Whatever he is. You do realize I'm covering nearly all of your duties until you get back, Toshiro points out with mild irritation, and they can tell he's mildly irritated because the floor around him is covered in light frost. You're not the only victim. Ichigo is unfazed by any and all random weather changes. He just scowls and snaps. Do you want to switch? Because we could switch anytime. Don't fight, kids. Renji drawls, reappearing from the kitchen, arms filled with 3 huge bags of Mom's homemade lunches. Even Mom will miss these fabulous weirdos because they're the first people since Harry not to take her cooking for granted. No sense in turning on each other when we should all be ganging up on the cup. Kuroku. There, Rukia says decisively. Renji's being more logical than you are, fool. Think about what that means. And with that, she punches Ichigo viciously on the arm, waves and smiles sweetly at Jenny, and marches out the door, followed by Toshiro, who nods coolly, literally and figuratively, and Renji, who gives Ichigo a tearful shoulder bump before taking off. Ichigo slams the door behind them, leans back against it, and sighs in apparent exhaustion. Not being on long, tearful goodbyes, these people. Who's Kyoraku? Hermione inquires with avid interest. It's like she honestly believes Ichigo's going to answer a direct question, despite the fact that to the best of the twins' knowledge, that has never once happened. He's sort of my boss, Ichigo tells her, but not really. Case in point. We love your friends and wish to steal them for ourselves, Ichigo. Fred declares before anyone can pester Ichigo with more questions and drive him away. And we'd die to have your teachers teach us to be as unspeakably cool as they are. George adds. Funny you should say that, Ichigo mutters, looking appalled but also amused. Though I'm sure they'd love you too. And that would be the end of this world and the next. I'm going upstairs. And he vanishes before anyone can catch him and sit on him and force him to tell stories. Not that that ever works, as aforementioned. Honestly, Hermione ups, arms akimbo. You'd think his whole life was classified and he'd been trained to resist interrogation. You would, wouldn't you? The twins silently agree. That's exactly what you'd think. The holidays are finally almost over, but the closer they get to heading back to school, the more obvious it is that Black isn't dealing with being trapped like an animal in his own house very well. In fact, he's taken to wandering around looking feral and caged, snapping at anyone and everyone. The man is a tragedy waiting to happen. But then most people would be in his place, especially Ichigo. Oh, who's he kidding? Ichigo would never let anybody cage him like this. He'd charge out and attack whatever the threat was or die trying. Not that that's a good plan or anything. It's a breathtakingly stupid plan, in fact, but it's still what Ichigo would do. You should destroy stuff sometimes, Ichigo suggests to Black in a murmured aside the morning everybody leaves. Seems like a good strategy. Ichigo noticed that Black brightened up a lot after Toshiro snapped that picture of the screaming woman in the entryway. It had a kind of spiritual energy mixed into the paint. Wizards are disturbing, Toshiro had reported severely, like Ichigo didn't already know. What? Black snaps, because he's in a lousy mood anyway and still hasn't forgiven Ichigo for inflicting all kinds of weird on him this holiday, which is fair. You're stuck in this house, and it sucks, right? So set something on fire every now and again. Seriously, just pick the thing you hate most at the moment and burn it. And if you accidentally burn the whole place to the ground, then heck, they'll have to move you somewhere else, won't they? You obviously hate this house with a special hatred. Maybe you can go live with Lupin or something if it's gone. Over the course of that spiel, Black's face gets lighter and lighter, and by the end, he's grinning maniacally. It's a little unhinged, sure, but still way better than the homicidally depressed look he was rocking before. Kurosaki, he says, your solution to feeling trapped in a building is to set fire to the building. Not while you're in it, obviously, Ichigo replies. But yeah, basically, whatever works. Wow, kid. Black rolls. I'm almost starting to like you again. But now you've got me wondering, what works for you when you're down? Oh, says Ichigo. I blow stuff up, generally. He's also given to attacking monsters and invading armed compounds and goading dangerous people into trying to kill him. But there's no need to go into all of that. Black nods thoughtfully. After a moment, he says, get the heck out of my house. Yes, sir. Ichigo agrees and heads upstairs to help Potter pack. The packing thing goes smoothly at first. Potter nods a welcome at him and shoves a stack of shirts over to be folded, and they work together in peaceful silence. But of course, this is Potter, so we can't last. Last night, he blurts out a perhaps of nothing. Snape told me he was going to teach me occlumency when we get back to school. Occlumency? Ichigo repeats dubiously, mostly because the idea of Snape teaching Potter anything ever is pretty dubious.
It's supposed to teach me to block Voldemort from my mind.
Potter explains, not sounding happy about it. Ichigo's not happy about it either. He's not sure how you'd go about blocking out somebody who's attached leech-like to your soul. He's pretty sure it can't be done, in fact. And if it could be done, it wouldn't be good for you. Besides, Snape and Potter. This is the stupidest idea Ichigo's heard all year, and it's up against some stiff competition.
He says, but it seems like it was really useful this time to know what he was thinking.
And that's not a happy line of thought either. Yeah, this time. Because he didn't know you could see what he was up to. Now he knows.
How would he know?
Potter demands belligerently. You had to know about Mr. Weasley somehow. I'm sure the story of your visions or whatever got all around the Ministry, and the Ministry is full of assholes. So no doubt one of them told your soul splitter guy. And from there he'll figure it out fast, because whatever else is wrong with him, he's not stupid. And then he'll start using it against you.
How?
I don't know. Non-stop horrifying images until your mind breaks, trying to mess with your memories, sending you lies. That would be the easiest. But the possibilities are endless with a direct line to your psyche.
Ichigo would know.
It's his mind, Potter insists. You can't lie inside your own mind. Ichigo likes how he ignored every other possibility there. This kid's reality just isn't like other people's realities, is it?
We're talking about the guy who figured out how to chop his own soul into pieces.
Ichigo reminds him, deciding not to bother swimming against the current. I'm pretty sure he can send you mental lies if he wants. Probably wouldn't even be that hard.
He must lie to himself all day long as it is.
Potter scowls at that, but doesn't argue further. After a while, he glances nervously toward the door, checking no one's there, then leans in towards Ichigo.
Do you think... The night I dreamed that I was the snake, it happened when I was awake, too. When I saw Dumbledore, I wanted to attack him for a second, like I was the snake again. Sirius said it was just a leftover feeling from the vision, and that Dumbledore would tell me if it was important, but...
Ichigo's not sure why they're messing the kid around like this, but he never signed any contract saying he'd go along with it. But he's never going to get a better lead into the subject than this.
Yeah, that's probably because of your messed up spirit ribbon.
Potter's head jerks back and he blinks at Ichigo, looking shocked, scared, and a little relieved. Well, makes sense. Any answer is better than no answer at all.
Spirit ribbon? Hard to explain. It kind of identifies the state of your soul. And like I say, yours is messed up. Tainted with something. Sorry about that. Good news is my teachers gave me a possible way to fix it. So we'll try that once we get somewhere with fewer people in earshot. Why do we need to not have people in earshot?
You'll probably scream a lot, Ichigo tells him frankly.
But cheer up. They're almost sure it won't kill you.
Potter shakes his head in wonder.
I think I hate you in the strangest way I've ever hated anyone. Because the thing is, I almost like you sometimes, but then you start talking, and I remember that I still want to push you off a cliff. You're welcome,
says Ichigo.